Hello, welcome to the windiest place on earth. We've just had to move position from the top of the ridge to down here in this bowl. We're here with Alex from FCP Euro and his wonderful off-road Cayman. We're at, it's called the Dunes, right? This is where people come to go off-road.
Dunes. We're right next to Nellis Air Force Base.
I prefer this than the casino.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. So this is probably the first Cayman that's ever been down here.
Yeah, I think so.
Built for the purpose of going off-road as well.
Yep. So, yeah, we pretty much, we sell a lot of different stuff. We sell Mercedes parts and Audi parts and Porsche stuff, and we wanted to do a Porsche project, but we kind of have done the track car thing, and we've seen people do the rally car thing, the safari thing. So we were like, how can we make like an ARA competition two-wheel drive rally car, but have a throwback vibe to like the 959 Dakar, the SCRS, and stuff like those videos of people ripping 997 Cup cars through the woods. We had to build something that looked like a Cayman and, was the price of a Cayman on Facebook Marketplace, but could survive a gravel road and maybe some ditch hooking and maybe some jumps. So
Facebook Marketplace is so dangerous.
I know, right? Yeah, this car started off as probably one of the cheapest Caymans you could buy on Cayman S's you could buy on Facebook Marketplace, with a giant smashed in like quarter panel on that side.
Okay.
And then this side has been tweaked, I know, because I 3D scanned it and it's way off. And now it's this. And really, we're kind of trying to show people that like you don't have to spend $1 million to build something that you can go take on roads like this and have fun with.
Yeah.
This is just a stripped down Cayman with some OEM upgrades like the CSF radiators and an off the shelf Hengst filter, and it rips.
So you mentioned Group B, but I kind of feel like this is more of a Group A thing. The amount of OEM parts that you've repurposed to create this is kind of like a Group A car.
Right. Yeah, it basically we had to figure out a way to take the cooling system from the danger zone of the front wheel well and put it in a place that's protected. And honestly, the only place I could think of on the front of the car was the front trunk.
Well, Porsche do that themselves as well with some of the circuit cars.
Yep. So they're like the new GT3 RS. That's all, like kind of cup car style front mount radiator. We ended up going with CSF radiators, 987 package. It's literally just off the shelf.
Yep.
There's nothing changed other than the placement. And then we used the factory Porsche fans. I just basically reverse engineered all the rubber mounting points and the factory Porsche fan controller. And it all just works. Even though there's so much missing from the car, it just works.
So you've made frames that those things slot into and then slots into the boot space at the front. Comes in through the standard radiator holes in the front bumper, out through the bonnet basically.
Right, exactly. So pretty much the whole front end of the car is just a fascia basically. It's just the factory bumper, and there's a huge aluminum skid plate underneath that goes back to about here. And then on top of that is the light pod and the CSF radiators. And then everything in between the CSF radiators and the body is all 3D printed. And it's nothing expensive. It was just 3D printed, basically right on my desk for the body stuff. So it's a pretty basic setup, but it works really well.
The whole 3D printing thing has changed the game in terms of being able to slot things in, right? Because like traditionally, like in the 90s, I guess you would cut stuff.
Fiberglass
stuff, and it's taken so long.
So
how long did this build actually take?
5 months.
Is that
with
all?
2 guys.
And that was with the body repair, everything?
Everything. Well, I did the body repair at, I think, 12:30 in the morning while we were all standing around and the car was getting wrapped like 2 or 3 days later, and I just was like, Bondo, done.
I love it.
So, yeah, it's all sort of I wouldn't go as far to say it's necessarily grassroots because we have sponsors and the whole thing, but we really try to keep it DIY. And I mean, the carbon scoop, for example, and we can get into the engine intake, but I made that in my garage with about $100 in PLA 3D printed molds. So
when you say it's built by 2 people, it's really built by 2 people.
Yeah, we kind of believe in like the person who's telling is also the one who's taught themselves. So the whole build series is just Nate and I pretty much, and we were the 4 hands that worked on the car.
So you mentioned the light pod before. Is that primarily function, or is it an aesthetic choice?
It is not only a totally kick-ass aesthetic choice. It actually saved us on the Overcrest Rally because between everything we've done to the car and the accident it was in, all of the pins on the back of the headlights just make no sense anymore. So we lost both of them at one point, and the light pod was brighter than every light on the front of the car combined. So it worked great. It has a stainless frame underneath, which does move around quite a bit on like washboard and surfaces like this. But it's held together great. And then it's just a 3D printed cover that I made, again, at my desk. Just hella 4000s.
So most cars that see me, you'd see like crazy LED light bars. You'd see like enormous things. So like that's really reminiscent of old Rally
Yeah,
pods.
I just Google image search rally light pod, and then I found a picture of a Mazda 2 race car with the biggest light pod I've ever seen in my life.
So we've mentioned the front end.
Yep.
You've
so,
got these blades, and then you've got a big scoop. So is that to keep the air in this area to then feed the engine? What's the scenario back here?
Yeah, so the wrap guys really dislike these because they're very sharp, and they sit right above their wonderful wrap. But basically, this is all with the primary focus of durability. All of this is. So the whole point of moving the cooling system into the front was so that you don't get mud and stuff in the back side of the radiators or in the front side, you've gotten with your cereal box driving down a river.
Honestly.
And then the whole point of the engine intake is to keep dust and stuff, especially when you're sideways, from going up and back over and into the
Are they
engine.
mounted on the roof bar, the factory roof bar?
Yep,
mounts?
I just 3D. We actually ended up 3D scanning the entire car. Or I guess I ended up 3D scanning the entire car, and then I just used that scan to make everything. So these were done off that scan. I just used the factory roof rack points.
Yep.
And it's held on great. Yeah, the factory engine intake is, I think it's on the left-hand
So only
side.
on the one side.
Yep, but it literally the first day we were out on Overcrest Rally, it just got completely caked with mud. So we were like, yep, that's would have been.
It's funny because people refer to it as a snorkel, but it's more of like a vacuum cleaner for road surface.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
goes straight from there, straight into the plenum, and you just get all sorts of debris.
Yeah, and so speaking of the plenum, we have a IPD plenum on this car with a Bosch Motorsport GT3 throttle body, and I was figuring out ways to do the intake. We partnered with Hengst, and they make kick-ass filters, so I was like, well, how can we make that sort of the prominent theme of the back end while also being functional? And I was like, well, what's the shortest path from throttle body to outside air? And it was the rear window. So we went with a roof scoop, primarily inspired by a Lancia Delta S4.
Yeah.
And
They
the
also
rest
have a
was
glass at the back you can see in as well. So
Yep.
on the S4 you can see the whole inlet tract. They're turbocharged and supercharged, aren't they?
yeah, which is why they sound insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So having the short tract actually has the two benefits. One, it's great for performance, but also you get that reverb out of the car.
Yeah, when it's coming at you, it's a great sound. But in the car, we actually joked about this on the rally after driving the 1,500 miles. We don't have exhaust drone. The Soul Performance exhaust is great, but we have so much intake drone. Like Nate and I, by the end of the rally, were like, oh, I have to use sixth gear again.
You're kind of plumbed in to the intake.
Yeah, it really sounds just like a GT4 RS or, something that's $80,000 more expensive than this.
Well, we heard it on the way here, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. It's great.
So you've got 15-inch braids.
Yep.
That's unusual. Normally
Yeah.
Caymans are like 18s.
Yep.
I think you can put a 17 maybe.
Yeah, so the wheels and tire combo was really probably a lot more prioritized in the build process than people would ever imagine it to be. And don't tell the government, but yeah, these are WRC hard compound tires. And they ultimately dictated, we wanted to run a 15-inch wheel with this much sidewall so you can hit stones and stuff.
I'm guessing the biggest thing with these cars is one, if you're going off-road traction, two is punches, and you want to just keep going.
Right, exactly. And the third thing is on Caymans, the whole aluminum substructure that holds all the suspension and engine assembly in is not the strongest thing in the world. So we had kind of a three-way race with all these engineering parts to make these wheels fit and the suspension work with the 10 inches of wheel travel that it has. And it was kind of a nightmare, but it worked out.
So you were juggling the constraints of needing to select the tire you want,
right?
Not being able to fit the wheel size with the other components, and all of these things.
And then also a Cayman never having done this before, so that it was. So what we ended up doing was one day, Nate, I was planning on doing some crazy, 5-axis CNC uprights to accept bringing the tow arm in, so we could mount the 15-inch wheels.
They hang really low into the barrel.
Really low, and they're really far back. I think it's for strength, but the factory upright castings on these cars are hollow. They're made by Brembo. They're really gnarly. They're sick if you like going on road. But so I was going to do this billet thing, and Nate, the guy who really spearheaded the whole project, he walks in one day, and I'm like about to get started on the uprights, and he's like, dude, I had this shower thought. And I was like, oh God, what did you do? And he's like, I think we can put 4 front uprights on all 4 corners because they don't have the tow arm that comes out.
Right.
They just have a tie rod, pickup point. I was like, okay, let's 3D scan it and find out. So we scanned it and we found out, and it literally is the same except the tow arm mount is moved in.
Surprising.
Because VW Group.
Does that open up brake choice as well? You go bigger brakes in the rear?
That would have been great, except the 15-inch wheels was still our biggest problem. So we ended up running non-S calipers. I don't remember if they're off of a Boxster or Cayman.
2.7 car?
Yep. So a non-S caliper and rotor fit great. And that's pretty much everything. To top it off, which most people would probably talk about this first, but to top it off, we have a 50 millimeter bilstein Rallye damper. That's kind of a do-it-yourself thing. So we just milled out the inside of the upright and then it slotted right in.
So how does that work from choosing a motorsport damper for a car that doesn't do that kind of motorsport? How do you do that?
Exactly. Well, Nate is really the genius behind it. Nate Vincent he's a guy who used to race our TCR cars and our GT4 program, and he's a wizard with suspension. So he kind of figured all of that out. But ultimately, what ends up happening is you just let the suspension drop to its lowest point, measure that, go all the way up, and then you do your math from there. The other challenge with the suspension is once we had moved that toe arm in, we were like, okay, great, everything fits, but the geometry was all whack. We wanted to use Mila HD control arms because they're really stout. So we ended up remaking the whole aluminum cradle that comes on the Cayman out of steel, which people who have tracked Caymans probably know what I'm talking about. Basically, Caymans have this crazy superstructure that holds everything in.
It's almost like a frame notch you'd have, like a reverse frame notch.
Exactly. It looks crazy, and it's super thin. I think in the 3D scan I did, it was like 3.2 millimeters thin at its thickest point, or at its thinnest point. So Nate just kind of handed it to me and was like, I need this in steel. So I was like, okay. So I 3D scanned it, reverse engineered it, made a click together thing because I'm not good at welding, and then I MIG welded it, and it's held up great.
From a stiffness point of view, that's probably pretty useful for some track guys.
Yeah, I think it would be. We really should figure out a way to make them because they did actually work. The only trouble was on the Overcrest Rally, the eccentric bolts kept coming loose from all the vibration. In the slow-mo shots, you can literally see the wheel doing this from the washboard because it's so intense. And so we ended up having to shim it with some AMG GT4 race car shims we had laying around.
More things from the
from the parts bin. Right. So that's the suspension setup. Otherwise, everything else is pretty much standard. It's OEM control arms, the whole thing.
Interior's cage though, right? Is it modified highly inside, or is it just for safety? Have you got entertainment seats and cage and that sort of stuff? It's
pretty much, so it's Sparco everything. So it's Sparco steering wheel, Sparco seats. We ended up 3D scanning both my driving position and Nate's because we're two kind of ends of the spectrum, I guess. We made sure that we could both fit. So Sparco seats, and then the cage was done by Bill Doyle of Cage This in Connecticut. He's done, I'm not joking, hundreds of these.
Really?
He's a monster.
Notoriously difficult to cage actually because there's no room.
There's literally no room. Which is part of what kind of inspired the intake to go through the roof because we wanted to do side scoops and then it was like there's literally no room. So that's the Rally Cayman, and honestly I really wish we could be ripping it around these roads, but it's going to Apex at the Hanks booth, and
I need to keep it good for that. Hopefully sometime in the future you can send us a video of it rip around here. Thank you so much for showing us around this, Alex. It's been a real pleasure. Amazing. We're going to wrap this up now, guys. Maybe we're going to watch some Polarises on the dunes. But next stop for this is SEMA. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to watch more videos like this that YouTube thinks you'll like, click here. If you'd like to watch some more videos in this playlist, then click here. And if you really enjoyed the video and you'd like to subscribe, you can do that by clicking here.